Hey, what's doing there, red and gold faithful? It is the Niner Nut coming back at you with episode 6-9. And in this episode, I'm going to cover a variety of topics from their loss to the Miami Dolphins to their upcoming matchup against the Detroit Lions to Brock Purdy's contract information to Coach Shanny, and then with the offseason. Before I get started, I just want to put something in perspective because I think that it's important for me to put this out there. I see a lot of people who cover the 49ers on podcasts or talk shows or what have you, and there's a couple of things that really bother me about that. First of all, some of them are really good. Some of them are really informative. Even the people who make a lot of mistakes during their podcasts do come back with a lot of good facts. And some of these people are, known reporters that are known for covering the 49ers all season long. And while I have a lot of respect for them as journalists, I kind of feel sometimes, though, that the information they put out there per their podcast is nonsense and bullshit, nothing but clickbait, just trying to get information, just trying to get you to look at it and kind of piss us off and get views. And they're really good at that because they got me, to be fair. And then there's a bunch of them I don't think know what the fuck they're talking about. I also can't stand when people don't curse on their podcast because, it's rated G or whatever the fuck. Listen, I'm not going to do that, okay? I talk the way I talk, and I think that if you're someone that has the knowledge and has the words and chooses not to curse, but can curse, that's fine. If you're someone that doesn't believe that cursing does anything, it just makes you look silly, I disagree. Because sometimes people are so fed up with a certain subject, hence be me with this team this season, that you can't articulate yourself enough, and that's why we curse, because we're so frustrated. So I can't stand that when cats don't curse. I don't trust most of them. But let's get back to the subject at hand. Also, too, well, I can cover that when we get to it. So, looking back at last week's loss against the Dolphins, for the most part, let me say the game was putting me to sleep. Even from the beginning, I was literally falling asleep. I woke up and was missing plays because I had passed out for a little bit, and then I had woken up. Not that it mattered because they looked like absolute dog shit anyway. There was a couple of plays there. There was some time there that I thought they were going to turn some things around, but once again, you couldn't get the running game started, and offensive line had a hard time keeping Purdy, keeping him up straight. So, another loss, right? Another loss, another game they could have won. Something occurred to me last night as I was watching the Seattle-Chicago game, which was an absolute pile of shit matchup. If you look at the NFC West for what it is, and you take into consideration the abundance of talent on all four teams, you will notice that we are, in my opinion, the most talented team in that division. I'm not just talking about on paper. I'm talking about in real life. Here's the problem, is that if injuries wouldn't have occurred and if we wouldn't have had the type of season we had, we could have won the NFC West with ease because to my knowledge right now, Seattle and the Rams, they're okay. I'll say the Rams are a little better than Seattle, but they're not great teams, either one. Now, maybe they have some injuries to themselves. I know Seattle's missing Kenneth Walker. I know that DK Metcalf's had a lot of injuries. But I will say that when it comes to the Rams, they do certain things well. Kyren Williams is a legit running back, and they have a great 1-2 combination with Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. I will say that. Matthew Stafford's numbers are nothing to lick the screen at. They're mediocre. We've seen him this year various times not do much, but then again, he hasn't had to with the play of Kyren Williams. and their defense has picked it up in the second half of the season. When it comes to the Cardinals, I think the Cardinals weren't expected to do anything. Went on a little run there, shot their load, and now the Cardinals are what they are. They'll only get better. We were the most deepest team in that division, or are the most deepest team in that division. And I don't want to go into the shoulda, woulda, coulda. Imagine if a healthy Ayuk, imagine if a healthy McCaffrey, because that's neither here nor there. But if we're going to play that little game of imagination, yeah, we dominate the NFC West with ease. So NFC West with ease, I should say. So that's one tidbit of information that I like to think about. But yeah, going back to this loss, they deserve to lose against the Dolphins. You know, they couldn't get the running game going. We know that. There was no Isaac Garriendo, right? There was no Jordan Mason. There was no Chris McCaffrey. Patrick Taylor Jr. was the running back, as was Israel Awakabanda, however you pronounce his name. I just butchered it. Who came over from the New York Jets? He was a draft pick. They had high hopes for him in New York, but I guess he fizzled out there with injury, and as well as them drafting two other running backs along with Breece Hall. It was kind of hard to accompany four different running backs or whatever. But whatever the case, we couldn't run the ball to save our lives, so that's always going to be a problem because we are a running team first. The run sets up the pass, and that didn't happen at all. So obviously that's going to be a problem, right? And again, the Dolphins haven't had a great year, right? We saw they built without Tua Tagovailoa for a few games when he went down with his concussion. But to give him credit, he has had a pretty good season statistically. And when he's not hurt, he's not bad. But hopefully he finds a way to stay non-injured. So we led the way 7-3 early on. Deebo Samuel had a nice 16-yard touchdown pass from Brock Purdy. It was nice to see Deebo go back to being used primarily as a wide receiver. They took the lead at 13-7 in the second quarter, and then Jake Moody cut it to 13-10. And this is kind of where it just took off. The Dolphins went on from there to kick 2 field goals, making it 19-10. And the touchdown pass to Eric Saubert from Brock Purdy cut it to 19-17. That would be the closest the Niners would ever get. And from that point on, Jason Sanders kicked a field goal, and Devon Arcane ran for that 50-yard touchdown rush. If any of you guys saw it, it was just, first of all, it was a really nice play on his part. Terrible tackling on the 49er defense. Just going over some stats real quick. Purdy was 26 of 40 for 313, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, sacked 3 times. Purdy led the team in rushing, 4 carries, 26 yards. Deebo, 5 for 25. Patrick Taylor, 8 for 24. Kyle Juszczyk, 1 for 6. We ran for a total of 81 yards, which absolutely sucks. George Kittle led the way, 8 catches, 106 yards, no touchdowns. Deebo Samuel, 7 catches, 96 yards, 1 touchdown. Juwan Jennings had 4 catches. Ricky Pearsall had 4 catches. And then on the defensive side of the ball, another week with no sacks. When have you known a 49ers defense to go back-to-back weeks with no sacks? Fred Warner led the way with 11 tackles. Renardo Green was second with 10 tackles. D. Winters had 8. But no sacks for the 49ers. 3 tackles for losses. And Jake Moody was 1 for 2. He missed a field goal. So, most unfortunately and disgusting to look at when you look at the team stats for the game is the Niners had 11 penalties for 90 yards. One of the most penalized games they've had all season long, and we've seen this trend unfortunately continue all year fucking long. And I can't understand what it is at this point. The only thing I will say about last week, it was the substitutes who haven't played as many live downs as Spencer Burford and Aaron Banks, but I kind of think and for Trent Williams, but I kind of feel like that's bullshit because these guys are professionals that should be ready every week on every play. There was a segment where the Niners got down to the goal line and then went backwards several yards. I've never seen a team go from one year to the next in which they really shoot themselves in the foot, especially in the red zone. That's something that we've become amazing at in this terrible season, and I'm wondering why exactly. I'm really wondering why. And I don't have any direct answers, although I've come up with a few, and I'll get to that later. So this was a terrible loss. The season's over. We're statistically out of the playoffs, of course. There's no way we can get in, which is a good thing because I think that this team really needs to retool and just get better through the draft, get better through maybe some trades, and get better through some real solid um, off-season free agent signings. That's exactly what we need to do. It's easy, it's pragmatic, it's a fixable mistake. I would also like to see perhaps a trade here or there to acquire more draft stock. That would really be good because this team needs the roster depth. Let's face it. Um, Going on quickly to the Lions game this week, I know there are several players out with injury already. Isaac Arienda was questionable. Leonard Floyd may be questionable. I know there's no Aaron Banks. I know there's no Spencer Burford. So that leaves the offensive line to be suspect. I'm trying to think of the other players that aren't going to be playing. Whatever the case, like everything else, we're all banged up. No Dre Greenlaw, who's been shut down for the rest of the season, which I think is a very smart decision. An injury like that late in February when he suffered it does take quite a while to get back to what he was used to. Now, people are going to say, but he had the same procedure as Aaron Rodgers, but they're playing two different positions. And of course, for Greenlaw, it's a lot more cutting left to right, stopping on a dime and going backwards. So it takes a lot. It takes a lot to get used to. Hence, be why he's getting some soft tissue injuries, I believe, in that leg. It really makes sense. In fact, it does happen in the rehab, is what I'm told. But look, I don't have any expectations from this point on, and maybe that's a good thing because I'm spent, I'm tired, I'm exhausted, as I'm sure you all are, and with good jest because I love this team more than anything. But I don't have any expectations for a win this Monday night. In fact, I think that if it becomes a blowout, to which we've seen the Lions do to multiple teams this year, I think it's really going to set a precedence in the locker room for something drastic to happen. I don't want to see that happen. What I'd like to see is if they're going to lose, I'd like to see them lose by a touchdown, 10 points, 2 touchdowns, or, hey, look, they may shock us and knock off the Lions because the Lions have had a lot of injuries, especially to the defensive line this season, right? They lost Aiden Hutchinson. They lost several of the players on their defensive unit, and we do know that their defense does give up points. But then again, this is also the 49er team that gets into the red zone and can't convert. So I don't know what team is going to show up. And I think it's gotten worse each week as the injuries have increased. I never know what team's going to show up. Is it going to be the team that gelled from, that was like last year that has shown up very rarely this year? Is it going to be the team that cannot run the ball like we saw on Sunday? Is it going to be the team that can't stop anyone coming at them on defense, which we've seen various times this year, especially when they've played against Kieran Williams and John Connor in their own divisional matchups? So I don't know what team is going to show up. We never know what team's going to show up here. The injuries have absolutely wrecked this team from head to toe. We even lost Mitch Wishnowsky for the season, our very needed punter. I mean, any other team has these problems, and obviously I doubt they're going to be able to plug all these holes. Although some teams have, somewhat of an easier time, we lost a lot of key guys, and it's really hard to replicate those guys, what they do with others, no matter who your backup is. But that's been the season all year long. That's what was happening coming into the season, and it continued on. So let's just get that out of the way. Next order of business is this Brock Purdy contracting. In the last 2 weeks, I have heard and posted, as you can see on my page, various different opinions of people, reporters and journalists who cover the 49ers extensively. And I can't believe the things I'm hearing, especially from Grant Kahn and I forgot the other gentleman's name. Bear with me here a second because I've only started to I never really had heard of him, and I just started to sort of listen to some of his information. I think it's Larry Kruger of the Kruger Show. He did. By the way, he does have some good points. I'm not saying everything he says is bad, but they did a segment on the Purdy contract, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I thought that I thought I was in space, man. I really thought I was in space. I couldn't believe that these two guys, and again, this is where it comes back for what I was saying before about bullshit journalism trying to just get clickbait and views and listeners. One of them was talking about how they didn't think Purdy deserved to get a lot of the top money that I guess they feel that he's going to get in the offseason. And they started questioning his arm strength. Was it an injury? Was it that forearm injury that he suffered against the Eagles 2 years ago? Then they started to question his growth in terms of a quarterback, and then they started to question this and question that. And what I really can't stand is when people do it when the team is down. And yeah, Purdy hasn't had as good a season as he did last year, for sure. Um, but I still think the proof is right in front of all of us. We know exactly who he is. Kurt Warner has said it. Various other players have said it. Tom Brady, Richard Sherman, Steve Young. A lot of the times I'm going to believe them, and I'm going to believe my own fucking eyes that this guy is the real deal. But even the real deals have rough seasons at times. It happened to Brady. It happened to Montana. It happens to everybody. You lose a lot of key players and everything changes. We have lost Brandon Ayuk, who had a real good connection with Brock Purdy. We had lost Debo for a few games. We had lost Kittle for a few games. We had lost Juwan Jennings for a few games. No Chris McCaffrey in the backfield. So yeah, this team has suffered injuries, and that definitely plays a role for whoever the quarterback is. And don't tell me it doesn't. It definitely does. But going back to what Kruger and Khan were talking about, there's also a point where Kruger brings up the idea of bringing in Sam Darnell, getting him back, and him being the potential quarterback for them next year. And I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I felt like I got kicked in the balls by an orangutan. And I hit myself on the head and said, are these guys serious? I mean, I know they're just trying to get baits and eyes, but seriously, you couldn't come up with something better than this? And here's what I'm talking about. And I think I forgot who covered it so eloquently, but they said, if you take away all the good that Sam Darnell has had this season, that's the real good season he's only had has been this year. And that's after what? Being in the league 7 years, being on how many different teams, from the New York Jets to the Carolina Panthers to the Minnesota Vikings. How many failures, how many interceptions where you were seeing ghosts in certain games. He's only really had one good year under an extremely great head coach who should be coach of the year and a pretty decent team. And that is your claim to fame on who to replace Brock Purdy with? You got to be kidding me, because deep down Sam Darnell's the same quarterback. I don't care what anyone says. I'm not fooled. I think he's having a great season. I commend him for the great season, but I will guarantee you Minnesota does not go to the Super Bowl. And that's where it ends, because next year you won't see him in Minnesota. They are not going to re-sign him with J.J. McCarthy in the wings. You'll see him somewhere else, and he may get big money. But it's the same Sam Darnell. It's just him in a better system. And yeah, maybe he's improved a little bit, but he still has the potential to turn the ball over the way he does. And there's no way they're going to get to the Super Bowl. They're not getting out of the NFC. They're not going to beat Detroit. No way, no how. So I couldn't believe that these guys, Grant and Khan and Larry Kruger, were talking about this and how Purdy should they feel that his agent's going to ask for all the money to be top cat. I disagree. I have a prediction of my own that Purdy will do the Brady route and ask for a substantial amount of money, but not all that he can get. That way they can build around the team. That's my opinion. That's what I think is going to happen. Let's see if it happens. And there are so many other podcasts on YouTube that you could find that just fucking talk a lot of shit and just knock the team the way it is. There are good ones too. There are definitely some good ones. There are definitely some good points brought up. I find myself agreeing and disagreeing, but I feel like with certain ones, like I just mentioned, I feel like that's nothing more than just for you to say, how could you say that? Or just keep listening and watching. And it's just, there's no logic to it when you see it right in front of you. I think Purdy is going to get a good amount of money. They're going to lock him down for 4 years. And then there'll still be money out there for the team to spend. I can't see him being that type of guy, and I could be wrong, but I can't see being him that type of guy that wants to be top cat. Because let's face it, look at all the top cats who are getting paid big money right now. Where's Dak Prescott at? Where's Love at? Jordan Love. Yeah, the Packers aren't playing bad, but where's he at? Jordan Love had starts off shaky and then has started just to play a lot better. Plus, it doesn't hurt that Josh Jacobs is your workhorse there. That's all I'm saying. I'm not taking anything away from Jordan Love, LaFleur, or the team that they've put together there because I think it's a good young team. Who were the other quarterbacks that got paid big money? I mean, Prescott is overrated, right? So I can't see him wanting to be that type of guy, Purdy. I could see him saying, hey, give me this much, and then let's share the rest and rebuild what we need to rebuild because there's going to be a lot of moves to be made in the offseason, which brings me to our next segment. I posted today the free agents for the upcoming offseason. There's going to be a lot of tough decisions that have to be made. If you're not familiar with with what I had put up, it basically was just all the information showing all the free agents for this upcoming season. I'm looking at it now on my phone here, and I will go over that together. So here are the players that are going to be free agents in the offseason, and this is whether it's, let's see, where... universal free agents, voided contracts. I'm just reading from the paper. Javon Hargrave, Shavarius Ward, Dre Greenlaw, obviously Devondre Campbell, Isaac Yiadom, John Feliciano, Joshua Dobbs, Brandon Allen, Kevin Givens, Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, Aaron Banks, Khalil Davis, Chris Conley, Tashawn Gibson, Eric Sorbet, Pat O'Donnell, Rocky Sin, Ben Barch, and then there's, let's see. There is Curtis Robinson, Nick McLeod, Patrick Taylor, Jalen Moore, Talanoa Huffenega, Elijah Mitchell, Sam Akinyawanu, Braylon Willis, Jalen Graham, Jake Tung, Jordan Mason, Evan Anderson, Austin Pleasance, and Mason Pline. So there's a good amount of players that we're going to have to make a decision of. Now, the first one was Javon Hargrave. Having the tricep injury devastated his whole season. He only played 11.2 snaps the whole season. He is 32 years old, and he is under a $21 million contract. I can either see them restructuring his contract or letting him walk. That's just my opinion. Shavarius Ward, I see coming back. He's on a $13 million contract. He is 29 years old and has played almost 70% of the snaps. He has not had an easy year, especially with the unfortunate loss of his young daughter. So I think he will be back. Dre Greenlaw, another guy who has had a really tough year and only appeared in 2 games this season, is on an $8 million contract. He is about 28 years old, and he played 3.7 amount of this total snaps. I can definitely see him coming back next year. The players who I don't think they should bring back, obviously we know Devondre Campbell's finished in San Francisco. He could be finished in the NFL, to be quite frank. I don't want Isaac Yiadom back. I don't think he's that good, and I think John Feliciano while being a solid offensive player, I should say a lineman. I don't think his knee injury is going to allow him to come back. He is 33, which is not old, but when you have a knee injury to that extent, it could definitely devastate the rest of your career, especially at offensive line. So no Feliciano. Joshua Dobbs, I wouldn't mind if they brought back. I feel like what was the reason to getting him and just not utilizing him and utilizing Brandon Allen instead? Brandon Allen is another guy. Um, I think they're going to bring both of them back because they both know the system. But I wouldn't mind having an upgrade there. Kevin Gibbons missed a good chunk of the season. He is 28 years old, playing about 20% of the snaps. He was having his best year. You got to bring him back. Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, you got to bring him back. I think he's an all-purpose good linebacker. He's filled in effectively at times this year. He is 29. He's played 14 and a half amount of the snaps. Aaron Banks, only 28 years old, played 82% of the snaps, had some injuries down the line. I like Aaron Banks a lot. I think he's a big, strong body who knows the system. I think they bring him back. Guys who I don't think are going to be coming back. This Khalil Davis, I don't think you'll see. Obviously, Chris Conley is now 33. He really doesn't have a place in the wide receiver corps. I don't think we'll see him, obviously. Tashawn Gibson was recently signed. I don't think you'll see him again. Eric Sorbet, one position we definitely need to improve upon is backup tight end. We do miss Ross Dwelly. I don't think you'll see Eric Sorbet. Pat O'Donnell will be gone. I don't think you'll see him back as a punter. Rock Ya-Sin has been a disaster. He'll be gone. Ben Barch at left tackle. I don't see him coming back either. Curtis Robinson, I don't see coming back. Nick McLeod, I don't see coming back. I can see them bringing back Patrick Taylor. Why not? He knows the system, and with so many injuries going around to running backs, it doesn't hurt to have that many running backs. Jalen Moore, I could see us parting ways with him. Talanoa Hufnagel definitely comes back. Elijah Mitchell definitely comes back. Sam Akinwanio definitely comes back. Braden Willis, goodbye. Has he ever been thrown a pass? Don't think so. Jalen Graham, I think they end up keeping. Jake Tongues leaves. Jordan Mason, they end up keeping. Evan Anderson, they end up keeping. Austin Pleasant and Mason Pline both will be released. Look, they got to make a lot of room for Purdy's contract. And this is where we talk about the fact that I think Purdy's not going to ask for all that money because he knows they have to spend it in different areas. That's why I think it's a smart idea if they ask Hargrave to restructure or just part ways with him. Either way you cut it, I keep hitting the fucking microphone. Either way you cut it, they're going to have work to do in the offseason. Not to mention the scouting for the draft and where we're going to pick. Not to mention, are we going to try and trade for multiple picks in various rounds? Because I think we definitely need it. And then, of course, comes the free agency period. And then, of course, what trades are going to be made. So, look, let's talk serious for a minute. Unless you've been living in a fucking bubble, this team obviously needs help at the offensive line. And I'm not just talking about the two tackle positions. I'm also talking about center. Jake Brendel had a terrible year. Trent Williams was hurt. When he played well, he played well. His holdout didn't hurt the team the way Ayuk's holdout hurt them. Colton McKivitz, I think, is exactly what you expect from Colton McKivitz. He's not great. He's not terrible. He just is. He's sort of like a Mike McGlinchey. I like Banks. I like Burford. And obviously I like Pooney. So I think those are the three guys to focus around. And I think Trent Williams, of course, he will be coming back. He'll be healthier from his ankle injury. So maybe, they sign some players for the offensive line, but if they have a high enough draft pick, you never know. They may just draft themselves a tackle. They may draft themselves a guard. I don't see them drafting a center. Jake Brendel has not had a great year as a center, so I think he can be expendable as well. Obviously, I don't see them picking up another running back, especially if they keep all these guys. There's really no point to it. I don't see them picking another wide receiver, although I'd like them to take another wide receiver, preferably one who has blazing speed downfield. I would like to see them draft a backup tight end who is legit. And then comes the most important part is the defensive side of the ball. Look, they are going to need a defensive tackle badly. They have needed a defensive tackle all season long. as I think the defensive line has been a little bit of the Achilles heel because of so many teams or players' ability to run through them, such as Kyren Williams and John Connor, who we saw run through them various times this year. It's been various disappointing. And again, like we always say, when we hold teams under 100 yards on the ground, for the most part, we win games. So they're going to have to rebuild that defensive line a little bit. They're also going to have to get themselves another linebacker because obviously Devondre Campbell's gone. We don't know if Dre Greenlaw, will be 110%, although he did look 110% against the Rams. And we do have, Flanagan Fowles. And D. Winters, who I think has a lot of upside. D. Winters looks to be like a little spark plug, man. But it doesn't hurt to always have another linebacker. And then in the defensive backfield, with Shavarius Ward coming up as a free agent, I think they'll lock him down. Obviously, they locked down Diamador Lenore. It wouldn't hurt to have another corner, to be honest, because I don't think that's one position you could never have enough of, or a safety for that matter. So those are just some of the areas they really have to make moves in. Now, whether it's by the draft or whether it's signing free agents or making trades, let's get it going. I personally would really like to see them have multiple draft picks in this upcoming draft, a good size amount so they can really start to restock their roster because in all truthfulness, this team still has a good chunk of the players that made the Super Bowl against the Chiefs in 2019. When you think of Kittle, when you think of Debo, and to be furthermore, I think that they also still have that core of players that has been with them for the duration. Again, Debo, Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, Chris McCaffrey, Brock Purdy, Trent Williams, Aaron Banks, Spencer Burford, Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, Shavarius Ward, and so on and so forth. So there's still a good chance for them to do something next year if everything works out. I think that they're going to be better stockpiling draft picks. I really do. In fact, I would like to see them maybe trade down here and there to acquire more draft capital and get as many picks as they can for the duration of the draft. Because then, the more players you draft, the more you'll be able to be flexible with them, whether you want to redshirt them for a season, whether you want to them to play, fill in, whatever the case may be. We're going to need a lot of that because that is the future of this team is how you draft. And to be fair, Larry Krueger was talking about how the 49ers haven't had the best draft history, especially the last couple of years, and he broke a lot of players down, such as Robert Beal, such as Drake Jackson, so many others, man, that have just flared out. Trey Lance, okay? So this offseason is going to be really pivotal. Look, let's break the season down. Why weren't they good this year? Well, there's a lot of reasons for it, and it's right in front of us. I think that the Brandon Ayuk situation did not help anything. Well, I don't blame Brandon Ayuk 100% because I am not in his shoes, and I understand he wanted to get as much bank as he could. Here's where I disagree with all the little nonsensical childlike bullshit with him making those statements such as when asked, well, I wouldn't mind playing, however he said it, for the Redskins. I'll play for the Steelers when there was, maybe some talks had cooled off about the contracts. Here's my thing, and I don't blame him 100%. I don't blame him at all. I see his point of view. He wants to be compensated. This is a business at the end of the day. He's coming off a monster season, and he wants to get his bank. And to be fair, for his defense, the 49ers waited way too long, I thought. I thought that this is something that they should have acted on a lot faster. But to be fair, and I'm not there, I'm not in the building, I don't know what the communication is like between front office and player. I'd like to think that John Lynch, being the professional that he was in terms of front office GM as well as a player, he knew exactly how to talk and deal with the players, and therefore he probably had a good connection with Ayuk and basically told him, we'll get it done, just give us time. But I also understand Ayuk was, it's a business. There are other people who are around. If it's not going to be San Francisco, it could be somebody else. So I just don't like the nonsense. I just don't like the stupid statements and the stupid thing of taking, unfollowing the team you're playing for. I don't have time for that. I think that's absolutely, that's straight up schoolyard bullshit. Yeah, that deal should have gotten done a lot sooner. Let's face it. The Trent Williams holdout didn't hurt them as well. I mean, I think I agree with the Williams holdout because of his age, not that he's old, but because he's been playing for so many years, he wants to know that he's valued and he wants to finish his career here. So I can understand that. I think the Ayuk holdout hurt them a lot more, or by itself completely. It caused too much controversy and too much drama, but a lot of that has to do with the sports media who loves to do shit like that. And I'm sure a lot of them weren't even on the inside to even know what was going on. They were making shit up along as they went. Another couple of reasons why they had a rough season this year, obviously, was the injuries. I mean, we said it before. We had no Greenlaw coming into the year. We had lost Brandon Ayuk real early. A lot of players were banged up. Chris McCaffrey, Elijah Mitchell, the list goes on and on and on. So that's another reason that the season has been what it is. Also, defensive coordinator Sorensen. Look, that defense is not the same this year. I don't care about what the stats say. That defense reminded me of last year's defense with a little less. They didn't have a good impact from the defensive line, and I'm not taking anything away from Malik Collins and Elliott. I think Malik Collins and Elliott had, primarily Malik Collins had a really good year. But they didn't have the ability to stop the run. Teams were running at them and running them down, something they couldn't do last year. I understand the signing for Sorensen going from within because he's been there. He knows the lay of the land, but I don't think he's good at making adjustments. And what I mean by that is I don't see too many defensive sets that they play. I see the same thing. It's a 4-2 with 5 defensive backs. And for the most part, I would like to see more adjustments, because when it's not working, what do you do? And you can say, well, we lost our head guy. We lost him. Okay, after you lost Hargrave, what was the backup plan there? They didn't make a move to get a Jeffrey Simmons at the trade deadline. They didn't make a move to pick up anybody of that nature at the trade deadline, and I think it paid dividends, as you can see, because teams are running us the fuck over. Miami did it. Buffalo did it. Arizona did it. The Rams did it. They ran us over. So I don't think Coach Sorensen is the right choice at this point. It's not so much that I don't think he doesn't know the game, but he doesn't know how to make adjustments. Just too much musical chairs for my nature. And injuries. Injuries killed us this year. They killed us this year. So those are all the elements of why a team had a rough season, as best I can think of, with being totally honest. Our special teams was shit. Jake Moody was shit, 23 of 30. Coach Shanahan said something in the press conference today when he was asked about the reason why he's missing kicks. Does it have anything to do with his sprained ankle? And he said it may. And I'm saying to myself, if that's the case, why is he kicking? Why is he kicking if that's the case? He shouldn't be kicking if that ankle is still bothering him, because he is 23 of 30. And I give them a lot of credit for standing behind their player. But I wonder sometimes, is management standing behind your player because you drafted him, or are you standing behind him because you really believe in him as per the talent? And we all want to do that. We all want to believe in him. But again, what we're seeing is not translating well to all that talent. I mean, 23 of 30, 7 missed field goals. The important thing to ask yourself with that number is how important and where and when did he miss them, and how many games did we lose because of that? Or how many games did we almost lose because of that? So that's another issue. A lot of issues this season. A lot of issues. So this is going to be a busy offseason. I'm going to be honest with you. There's going to be a busy offseason. There's a lot of people who are just trying to hang it all on Shanny, and I disagree. It's not all Shanahan's fault. It is not all Shanahan's fault. Do I agree with everything he does sometimes? No. I don't think anybody would agree with anything a certain coach does, but I can't put it all on him. The inability to protect Purdy, I think that they got lucky that Purdy became more aware of using his feet as opposed to just sitting in the pocket and getting killed. They couldn't protect him as well as they did last year, in my opinion. And I think what you have to start to look at too, and I put this up in my storyline, is the last couple of draft picks they made or players they drafted. Was Ricky Pearsall a mistake? I don't know. Time will only see. We can't go by this year. And again, the young man has had a catastrophic experience getting shot. Thank God he's alive. But was he the right player to draft? Should we move away from Drake Jackson now? Do I need to see more out of Robert Beal? Georgia, I figured this guy was going to be good. I had heard that, I'd seen the video, seen the tape. He looked like he was a player. I think we need to see more from him. We haven't seen anything from him. So that's another question, is these draft picks that we're getting. Think about the last couple of drafts. I mean, they've been, I don't know, Braden Willis. Whatever happened to him? He wasn't that good. Latu, what happened to him? Tatum Bethune is just coming back from injury, right? And so on and so forth. Robert Beal, Drake Jackson. Drake Jackson, the last 2 years before this one, started off like a rocket ship, and then you didn't hear from him no more. Robert Beal, I haven't even seen on the field that much. So I'm wondering how depthful these drafts have been. Because you can't get away from that. It is what it is. It's what you see. So this is going to be a busy offseason. Anyone who doesn't think that way is mistaken. It's going to be an offseason, I think, for the ages in various different ways, various different areas. And I think it's all going to revolve. The first thing they got to do is get the Purdy thing done, signed. Get him in there 4 years, 5 years, whatever. Lock him in. Let's go. And then from there, we got to decide who's staying, who's going, who's worth keeping, who's worth getting rid of. Do we get rid of Jake Moody? How many of you say yes? I personally think we should move on from him already. I'm still shocked over the draft pick of him. Tell you the truth, that's just my 10 cents. We've also had players drafted in the past that weren't worth a stick of butter. Danny Gray, never heard from him again, right? Wasn't the guy, especially at wide receiver. Is Jacob Cowing the guy? I really don't know. I've only seen him really utilized in special teams. Ronnie Bell is obviously not the guy. He's got drop-itis, brick hands-itis. We've seen that. So they got to revamp that area too. There's a lot of roster spots that have to be filled. And while they may not all be starting spots, filling in all those key spots behind those starters is the most important. And teams that do that and draft smart in abundance always do well. Patriots, Kansas City Chiefs. I think that the antithesis, if there was a team that was the antithesis of positive drafting, is the Green Bay Packers. Think about all the players they have drafted who are now on the field either starting or contributing. Jordan Love, that's number one, right? Jaden Reed, Dontavian Wicks, Romeo Doubs, Christian Watson, Tucker Kraft, Quarry. All these guys, that's what we need. We need that. We need a nice stockpile of 10 to 12 draft picks. So we can stockpile players for the future and then utilize ones right away. So it's going to be an off season like you ain't never seen. And there's going to be a lot of people that aren't going to have a home. But that's what it needs to happen to shake it up. We're going to probably see a lot of guys get cut, get traded. And at this point, I'm open for it. I don't think you'll see the core guys move, but I think there will be some surprises because it's going to take a lot to acquire a good amount of draft picks and at the same time pay Purdy, manage things. I mean, this is what John Lynch does well. But I think there's a lot of moves on the way. And you know what? It may also be we also have 2 games left. Let's just hope for the most part that we get 2 wins or that we're at least competitive Monday night against the Lions. That's all I got for you right now. Niner Nut coming at you. I'll be coming back at you soon with some content. If you haven't already, subscribe to the page. Hit me up with a message, yay, nay, whatever you want to say. Be well, my friends. Peace.